Hello there. So we have a general election in 43 days' time, and sadly, Brexit has now been put back to the 31st of January 2020 in 93 days' time. Hopefully this is the last time that I have to reset that Brexit clock. As you know, last night those democracy-dodging MPs finally caved in and agreed to hold a general election on the 12th of December in just 43 days' time. I had previously worried that the majority Remainer MPs amongst them would all gang together and try and fend off an election while they worked at legislating for and holding a second EU referendum. But it appears that they ran out of their already weak arguments to maintain that strategy and were forced, in the end, to submit to the ballot box. After 3 previous government attempts to get an election, it was as if the House of Commons had suddenly been lubricated with a large dose of laxative, which freed MPs up to go through the yes lobby to vote for the election. But not only did it free up the House for a general election, it also unblocked the swamp, self-draining plug hole, as evidenced by the currently 54 MPs who have now decided not to stand in the upcoming general election, and there may be more to come. Although most of those MPs seem to have had more of an affinity with the European Union than with their own country, there are a couple of notable exceptions among them. But some MPs that should be going have decided to brave it out and hang on by their fingertips to the edge of that swamp-draining plug hole. But I would think that the full application of the industrial drain cleaner of a general election will soon shift the last of that muck. And I will point out that according to the BBC, 437 MPs suddenly ended up voting for the election last night. 20 voted against it, and over 190 did not vote. Now, some of the abstainers will have a good reason, like being one of the Speaker's team, etc., and the number does include the Sinn Féin MPs who do not take their seats. But 106 Labour MPs not casting a vote in that election division? I think people should look very carefully at their MPs and think twice before voting for them again. In fact, I would say that maybe it really is time to change your vote. Now, I had also feared that the opposition parties, being mostly lefties and Remainers, would have forced through the amendments that would allow 16 and 17-year-olds, as well as EU nationals, to vote in the general election. Something that the Labour Party, the SNP and the Lib Dems all pushed for last night. But while they were debating about it, commentators were pointing out that not only would this be a huge constitutional change taken very quickly with little if no scrutiny, but also that there may be legal and administrative problems with both proposals. For 16 and 17-year-olds to be able to vote, it would need a massive programme to guarantee getting them all on the electoral register in time. There was then the question of whether this would fall foul of EU GDPR data protection rules where children are concerned. But I would also add that the education system would need to be overhauled first to ensure that all children were fully prepared in an unbiased way to vote at 16, which would probably go against the grain with many of those currently employed in our educational system, if you know what I mean. And on EU nationals voting in our general elections, the big question was, does it fall foul of EU treaty requirements? And that's not a frivolous point. The BBC's Laura Koonsberg was asking the question. But thankfully, the Deputy Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, sensibly rejected those amendments. Anyway, now the election's going ahead, as long as the House of Lords votes it through as sent to them, of course, the Remainers will be increasingly worried that Boris gets back in with a majority large enough to sweep the Remain objections aside. So you have to wonder if Gina Miller and the anti-Brexit lawyer Joe Lyon-Moore QC are not trying to formulate some case or other that proves the general election is unlawful. But they will be scrutinising the election expenses of every single Brexiteer returned as a Member of Parliament. So I hope both the Tories and the Brexit Party will be extremely diligent in this area of their operations, as the likes of Gina Miller and the Remainer crowd would be ecstatic if they could get a Brexiteer or two unseated for overspending or submitting inaccurate expenses information. Now, many people have said that to ensure a Brexit-based victory in this election, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage must get together and sort out an election deal, or risk losing not only Brexit, but also losing the country to the hard left of Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. The problem I see here is that there are now two forms of Brexit on offer. Currently, Boris is offering his deeply flawed withdrawal agreement treaty and political declaration route, while Nigel is going after the pure, full, clean break Brexit. And as I understand it, Nigel has said that he will come to an agreement if Boris now changes tack and goes for the full Brexit. But otherwise, he will go on the full offensive and contest all seats in England, Wales and Scotland. Northern Ireland looks to be out because, as far as I can see, the Brexit Party is not registered to stand candidates in Northern Ireland. But the Tories have maintained that they will not be making any such deal. And now that Boris has taken half of the Remainer rebel MPs he sacked for defying him over Brexit back into the Tory fold, he's just made making that sort of deal a little bit harder. But the co-founder of Leave.eu, Aaron Banks, is doing his best to fill that gap by putting together a tactical voting app, hopefully soon to be ready to give Brexiteer voters a guide on how to cast their vote in their constituency to ensure an overall Brexit government outcome. But of course, on the pro-EU side, Gina Miller is doing exactly the same for Remainers. I'm just hoping that there will be a change in Boris Johnson's strategy to one of getting a large enough majority to ensure no deal is kept firmly on the table on January the 31st so that he can once again take the deal back to Brussels to get a real agreement, something that maybe he and Nigel can agree on. But this time, when Boris says we leave deal or no deal on the 31st of January, Brussels will know he means it. And it is now officially confirmed. Today was the last PMQs to be overseen by John Bercow, the outgoing Speaker of the House of Commons. All those dark rumours of him staying on have proved false, and his last day will be tomorrow, with a new Speaker due to be elected next Monday. And didn't he milk PMQs today? In a session that should be half an hour long, that Bercow stretched out into about an hour and a quarter, MP after MP stood up to tell him how wonderful he'd been. The goo was dripping from the furniture as they gushed about each other, seeming more concerned with what they thought of themselves in the House than what the country thought of them. But PMQs was more notable because of the exchange between the Tory and Labour leaders, which takes me on to my next point. And that is that both the current main parties understand deeply the importance of maintaining the two-party state to ensure their own survival. They will want to battle it out on the domestic issues of the economy, social services and saving the NHS from each other. And that was why Jeremy Corbyn went so heavily on the NHS in his questions to the PM today. Now you can sum up this blue versus red thing in a couple of sentences. On one side you'll get, If you don't vote blue, you'll get a red Marxist government that will take all your money to build a communist state, bankrupt the nation, and so destroy the NHS. And on the other side, if you don't vote red, you'll be handing the country and all your money to blue's mates, who will sell off the NHS. And those politicians who want to hide the flaws in the Boris Brexit plan or the Corbyn Brexit confusion will say things like, well, on the doorstep no one's talking about Brexit, they're asking me about schools, hospitals and the numbers of policemen, etc. Just like they did in the 2017 general election. And this is the eternal blue versus red Project Fear that they impose on the electorate every single election. The Remain campaign lifted this technique for their own use directly from the blue-red original version. And I suspect the Tories will use this technique against the Brexit Party candidates too. I advise you not to fall for it. If you're a Brexiteer, give your vote to the most Brexit-minded of the candidates, or use the advice of the aforementioned Leave.eu app to inform your decision. Although be aware that Aaron Banks has said that the Boris deal is good enough for him. And if you are a Brexiteer who would normally always vote for a certain party, and that party's candidate is a Remainer, then it's obviously time to change your vote. Anyway, what do you think? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you the same time tomorrow. Please do like and share this video, and also subscribe to my channel. And when subscribing, please do remember to press on the little bell next to the subscribe button. That way you'll get an alert every single time I put up a new video. And thank you very much for watching.